As many of you know, this program is sponsored by the City of West Hollywood regarding the documentary film Disarm Hate, which follows the story of 9 LGBTQ individuals who came together after the Pulse Massacre to join one man, a hairdresser and activist from New Jersey without political experience. And he built a national rally to demand LGBTQIA equal rights, to fight the NRA and challenge America's obsession with gun violence. And what an important topic for us to be having as we're getting close to hopefully that magical June 15th date where we're all coming back together and being in community with one another. It's time for us to be in community and spread love and kindness and compassion and warmth, and to remain vigilant in our commitment to eradicating hate and discrimination from all corners of our community and our world. And I'm so excited about tonight's panel brought to us by my colleagues on the council who are also here. And on behalf of the whole City Council, we want to welcome you. Thank you for participating. Thank you to all of our panelists. And I will now turn it over to Councilmember Sepl Shyne.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Jason for having this vision, Julianna for such an incredible art, really bringing this documentary to life, and Ashlee and Alexis for being here and being a part of this, and as the incredible activists that you are. It's really, being LGBTQ in America is scary, and our siblings experienced a horror and a tragedy, and it's something that every single one of us, when we go out in public, we are afraid of, and the entire United States. The sad reality is, despite this being many, many years, we are still fighting domestic terrorism and gun violence. What is true is that the activists that are here today and the filmmakers have just become stronger, and the City of West Hollywood stands with you and stands for progressive values and for eradicating domestic terrorism and gun violence. And thank you for being here. And Miss Jackie Steele, our excellent moderator, I'm happy you're here. And of course, Vic, you contacted me and have done such an incredible job with spreading the word about this film and documentary. And I'm very excited to hear you all. And I want to turn it over to my fellow colleague and friend, Councilmember John Erickson.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Shyne. Everyone on this panel is a badass. I'm just going to put that energy out there. I would not want to be on the other side of an issue with you all coming at me. That's all I got to say. But first and foremost, happy Pride Month. But second and most importantly, thank you for each and every one of you for not only your activism, your passion, but for the extra time in the day that you always give to make our world, our community, our society a little bit better. And without you, I don't know where we would be. I don't want to imagine a world without any of you. And I'm proud to be in this fight with you and to have this amazing panel discussion. I want to acknowledge our colleague, Councilmember John D'Amico, who's watching today. We see you, John. Hello. I also want to acknowledge my fairy godmother, Marie Cartier, who, like all of you, has kept so many people alive, but through the work and activism you're doing, hopefully we can get rid of this sick obsession with gun violence, that we have throughout our country, especially with the recent news that a judge declared California's ban on assault weapons illegal. Unconstitutional just a few weeks back. And so it's oddly timely. It's scary that we come off of the heels of another horrible, horrific shooting in San Jose, and how we must always remember those that we lost at Pulse. And I remember where I was that day. It was actually at the LA Pride. festival. And they thought a gunman was going to be coming into the festival as I was sitting and setting up there. And so thank you for your discussion. Thank you for your brilliance today. And I hope you have an amazing panel. And thank you for all that you do.
Council member, Mayor Pro Tem Meister is also attending too.
There you go. Hello, Mayor Pro Tem. And Jackie, it's all yours.
Okay, great. Well, the gang is all here. And I mean that literally, like the crew is here, and it's really great to be here with all of you. I remember where I was during that time. I actually worked with, I believe, the former poet laureate from West Hollywood, Stephen Rains. We put up the Pulse Memorial during Pride that year. So it was so interesting to see this film and really it brought it all back, I'm sure, for all of us that have watched the film. But before we get started, I just wanted to dedicate this discussion to all the lives lost at Pulse, to Julianna Johnson, all of our trans siblings taken from us too early, all LGBTQ folks who have lost their lives tragically and violently. So let's start from a place of community and honoring that with a moment of silence. Thank you all for sharing that space and being here. So super excited that from the cast we have joining us the incredible Ashlee-Marie Preston. Hi, Ashlee. We have Alexis Sanchez coming to us live, I think, from Sacramento now, right? After the big move. Jason Hayes, the founder of Disarm Hate. Hello. Director Julianna Brudek, representing with the flag in the back, and publicist Vic Gerami, publicist and journalist. Hi, Vic. Is everybody here on mute? Because I can see you and I really need to hear and feel you. So let's just unmute it. Okay. Okay, so we're going to dive right into this. If you have not seen the film, I don't actually know what you're doing with your life choices. So let's correct that. It's available on Amazon. You can get it there. I watched it twice. And both times I was in immediately. I cried, I laughed, I was here for the drama. There were so many nuggets in this film. The story itself is incredible. The background, of course, is important and the work is powerful, but there was a lot. So I also just want to say to Hollywood, you missed an opportunity. How this isn't a show, how they didn't take a bunch of queers and toss them in an RV and make that a show that we would all turn into. I have no idea, but someone needs to get, I'm sure, Vic, you can try to push and make that happen, but it was just incredible to watch that all go down. So I think we'll just start, can I call you Jules during this, Juliana? Okay, I like to call you Jules. Okay, what made you choose the 9 people you did for this journey?
It's such a great question. First of all, hi, Jackie. Good to be here. So I'm a casting director. That was what I did when I first got to Hollywood. I worked for MTV. I cast a lot of their reality TV shows like Exposed, Dismissed. And so like I was looking, first of all, when Pulse happened, like an alarm bell went off in my mind, like, something has to be done. And I reached out to Jason. Jason was like, hey, I'm building this rally. I don't have time to talk to a filmmaker. And I was like, okay, well, I'll call you back. And I just kept calling and calling. Anyway, while that was happening, I started thinking about who I would take with me. Because at first it was just going to be me and my camera and my boom, and I would go follow Jason around. But then I started thinking about, that's boring. I am not exciting. I'm like, a person that's very OCD. I'm a, more of a documentarian. I'm more of a, I guess, whatever. So I started compiling a list, and it was all these people that I knew that were working in Hollywood, like different actors and actresses. And I was talking to my friend Brendan, and he was like, Jules, pick people you know that are like on your Facebook that you love and that inspire you. Don't pick anybody, pick real people. And I was just like, oh, okay. And he goes, put a list together of the people that you would want to take, your top 10. So I got 10 people on a list. I reached out to all of them via Facebook. 9 of them responded. And it was actually 8. And then Kira was like, can I come with you And I was like, yeah, so that was the 9. So 8 responded, took all 8, added Kira Glenn, and we had 9.
Now, Ashlee-Marie Preston, you are a loud, proud, outspoken activist, stem to stern, morning, noon, and night. At the outset, there were some bumps. You almost didn't go on this journey. On the other hand, the castmates stood up and said they needed you there, that your voice was too important. You yourself were just too important to not have there. And Julianna, you had to step in and do some navigating. So Jules, first, what was that like for you? What was that turning point moment for you? What did you realize that needed to shift for you to make that happen?
So the question is with Ashlee?
I want to know for you, because you had a turning point moment where you said, I didn't hear her, and you needed to have a conversation. So I'm curious of if you remember what that moment was like for you, and when you realized you needed to kind of shift gears and have that conversation.
Yeah, it was really intense. So I think it was like 5 days before we were set to get on that RV. And I had a disagreement with one of my producers, and she was, very adamant about me looking at who I took, and said, maybe Ashlee isn't a good idea, because we all had a disagreement. And I was like, fine, I'm going to listen to my producer. I'm used to the way that things go. There's a hierarchy and you listen to it. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was sitting on my porch of my house, and I'm, all this funding is coming through. I mean, I haven't slept in days, and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I mean, Ashlee, I felt like, I just felt like the trans voice was so important, and that if I miss that voice, then what the hell am I making this film for? What are we doing in this world if we can't be all inclusive? And I had this, I don't want to say a come to Jesus moment or an aha moment, but it really was, it was an epiphany for me where I said, I'm going to take Ashlee no matter what. And that caused a great division in the production team. But Ashlee and I, we've been close ever since, and I made the right decision, absolutely. And when I looked at her like human, she responded in kind. And so we were able to, build the bridge and walk across together.
Mm. The reason I wanted to ask you that is I feel like with this film specifically, there are so many turning point moments, so many moments of really opening up to community, and I don't want to say bridging gaps because it sounds, but it is true. And there seem to be a lot of those moments. So I wanted to start with you at the outset. And then Ashlee, just going back to community and being embraced and also staying true to you. How did that feel, and how important was it for you to be on this journey?
It was so important that when I was told that I actually wouldn't be a part of it, probably, I still showed up. I still raised money. I didn't talk shit about the project. Because for me, like, I understood that this is critical, like there's lives on the line. And, to Jules's point, there was another producer who, was not a fit. That individual was actually not the fit, and which is why they aren't joining us today. No shade, partial shade. And so the thing is, I was just coming from a place where I understood that even though Black trans women experience the violence that we do in the socioeconomic disparity, I'm still 1% of I'm part of the 1% within our community who does have the capacity to thrive, who doesn't have some of the records and other things that can hold them back from succeeding in the ways in which they want to. And so I think that one of the reasons why, Jules, and we laugh about it today, like, I don't hold back on what I feel or what I think, because I understand that we can't heal what we don't reveal. So in this documentary, for those who haven't seen it, you're going to see some of the realest, rawest, takes on, issues within the LGBTQ community. Many of us grew up in a family where they're like, no matter what goes on in the house, when we leave this house, what happens here stays here. We don't air our dirty laundry out in public. And I really believe that Disarm Hate took the opposite approach and just put it all out there, and we just got messy and rolled around in it.
There are so many reveals, so many reveals. Jason, you talked about not getting the support from HRC, other orgs, just the overall lack of support financially and otherwise. Did they come around at any point? I know the funding came through. Was there a turning of the tide?
The funding really did not come through from the LGBTQ groups. The support and the funding did come through truly grassroots. George Takei actually tweeted asking people through his One Pulse organization, asking them to skip coffee for a day and donate to the rally. Yeah. And that's where it came through. Our average donation was $12 when you did the math. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of shocking to me that, you know, at the end of the day, that there were gun violence prevention groups, like your Newtown Action Alliance, which are based out of Sandy Hook, Connecticut. They had no problem standing behind the gay pride flag. Al Sharpton let me use his office in Washington, D.C. Didn't care that I was a gay white man. His office was fully at my disposal. Ebony, who works, his right hand in D.C., walked with me in that heat to choose the location. She went to the Parks Department meetings with me. So it was amazing for me, and also a learning experience for me to see where there was support and where there was not. And it was glaring when you opened your eyes. Mm-hmm. And I kind of stepped back and thought about that, because as a white man, gay aside, I'm a white man. If I can't get heard, who the hell is listening to Ashlee? No one. So I have to take this opportunity. Mm-hmm. If my trans sisters of color or, my gay brothers of color, if they're not being heard and I'm given even the slightest elevation of chance that someone's going to listen to me, I have to take that chance.
Yeah, and use your privilege. So I wonder about, because I know it was a grassroots funded, did any of the larger orgs come to you after and say, we really messed up, can we support you at any time? Has it ever turned the corner with any of the larger orgs?
No, nothing. No, and honestly, when I first went in and started organizing, I honestly thought I would start this, and then some of the larger groups would kind of come in, and it would merge, and I would kind of hand off the baton, and that never happened. So I just kind of kept going, which was both disheartening, shocking, but it was that anger that kept pushing me through.
Yeah.
There's an incredible woman named Poe Murray who works at the Newtown Action Alliance, and I would call her 3-4 times a day, her as well as Donna Dees, who organized the Million Moms March back before there was Twitter or Facebook or social media. And I would reach out to the two of them several times a day. I'm like, I quit, I give up, I can't do this. These people are horrible, they're liars. There's one person can't do this. And there was that kind of comforting voice. Okay, if this is the line for you, this is the line for you, it's okay. And then 45 minutes later, I would call them back and be like, you know what? Screw this, they're not gonna win. I'm getting this done. I'm trying not to swear right now. And they were like, okay, what do you need me to do? So they let me kind of pull back and regroup within myself, because there weren't multiple people to regroup with. And they let me do that. And then the minute I came back and I was like, no, they're not going to win, those people were there and they didn't blink, and it was kind of amazing that they were, of all of even the GVP groups, they were the tiniest ones that did the most work.
Jules?
Meanwhile, or after the fact, they're all wearing what he designed. I mean, okay, so let's just really quickly, can I just take a moment?
Unpack it. That's why we're here.
So I'm at this huge Parkland documentary movie event, which will remain unnamed, in downtown Los Angeles about a year ago. And they have the branding for Disarm Hate all over every one of their things, the rainbow, the words on their shirts, everybody's wearing it. I mean, the whole place was covered in ephemera, merchandise, Disarm Hate, and the flags. And I want to tell you just a piece, these were the people that turned Jason away.
Mhm.
The GBP groups that were there now rocking the merchandise and selling it. So
and Lady Gaga up there rocking it, everything.
Ain't it the way.
So
Well, I mean, every town for gun safety wouldn't even acknowledge me, wouldn't help me, nothing. They didn't even tweet out the information for the rally until the morning of. Who goes to a rally the morning of when they wake up? Like,
Right.
you share that in weeks and months before. But yet, every town purchased disarmhate.com. I tried to get it, I couldn't get it. So they bid for that and got it. And they put up all of this gay paraphernalia with the rainbow flag, and none of that money goes to our community.
Right.
Not a dime.
And really quickly, I just want to tell you in real time how it's going. So he's having all these problems with raising money and talking to gun violence prevention groups and getting the door slammed in his face. And I'm calling him going, okay, we're raising money. We've hit the 10,000 mark. We just did a car wash at the French Market in WeHo, which Ashlee orchestrated. And, you know, we're washing down cars and getting $100 donations. And I'm calling him and he's like, Jules, the rally isn't going to happen. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we're getting on a bus in 12 days. He's like, it may not happen. I was like, we're coming.
I mean, I asked that because I think it's important, especially during Pride Month. We all talk about the normalization of the community and from within the community. I think it's super important to hold orgs accountable, and there's orgs that do incredible work, but these are the moments when these calls come in, when you get a call from Jules, when you get a call from Jason, when you get a call from Ashlee or Alexis or Vic, those are the calls. These are the calls to action. So it's important to do and to also take very good care of our grassroots orgs. They know me. They know I wasn't going to keep it cute about that. There is one other star of this production that we must discuss, which is the RV. Because that, I'm going to say jalopy, that RV, you said it was supposed to fit a family of 4, okay? Now, I don't know who did this life math, but you had 9 activists in the back, 4 of you in the front. That life math just doesn't. How, Jules, talk us through it.
Oh my God, I'm gonna need other people's help on this because I think it like trauma inducing, like all of a sudden it brings up the PTSD in me. Well, when I got to the place, so I had ordered an RV that was the huge one, the biggest one that they had. And when I got there, it was like, wah, wah. It was like not what I envisioned. It looked so much bigger online and it was all I could afford with our budget. So I was like, I had my partner with me and I was like, it can work, right? And she was like, no, it can't. And I was like, it's gotta work, right? And she's like, no, it's not gonna work. And I'm like, we're leaving in 2 days. And she's like, not gonna work. So I pulled it up to the place where my producer worked in Glendale. And she was like, you gotta be kidding me. I can barely fit in here with all the food she had made. And it was just.
I mean, Ashlee kept it really real. When you were trying to get those shots of like, how's everybody doing? People were like, oh, Donato was like, I'm pumped, trying it. And Ashlee was like, listen, it's frustrating. It's funky. Would all of you do it all over again?
Absolutely.
Ashlee?
Absolutely. I think what it was in that moment is the thing that had also happened that a lot of people don't know is I was in a relationship and they had just broke up with me and announced the new girlfriend on the same day, days before we were leaving for the trip. So a lot of the aesthetic and a lot of the pain and I guess like the I don't know what to call it that came through on the camera. It was because like I was in a lot of pain. I was in a lot of pain because that relationship ended. I was in a lot of pain because there were several lives down in Florida ended. I was in a lot of pain because I was being attacked by someone who was a producer who no longer is and having my character assassinated. And the last thing I needed was a toilet that was overflowing and getting in between my toes. The last thing I needed was, being crammed in a small space talking about the traumas of my last 30 years on the planet. Like it was very challenging, but the individuals on that RV, they are still some of my closest friends to this day. And it's a journey that like you never forget. And I went on there and I thought I was gonna make friends, but I came back with family.
Yeah. Alexis, what about you? You had a whole journey in that RV. Would you do it all over again?
I classify it as type 2 fun, right? When you're in it, you're like, oh, that's the worst. I don't think I'd ever, and then you give it a week and you're like, yeah, that was fun. I would do that again. I will say, I think the space and the RV itself and the challenges that it presented ended up, like it did bring us closer together. And it did, I think I was thinking about the fact that it was the cast members that drove it. And like oftentimes we were driving through the night. When we left Los Angeles to get to Memphis, like we drove nonstop, stopping only for gasoline and for like food and stuff like that. And then it was several people like Kira and Joey that would like pull all-nighters and like just keep us going. And that I think, like us all pushing ourselves to the brink of exhaustion and having all these really deep conversations, I think that's where a lot of the really, really great work and conversations and, like conflict that eventually led to personal growth came from.
So it didn't take long to get into erasure, intersectional issues within the community. Rachel talked about biphobia. Michelle and Ashlee both had some things to say then about bi folks and bi dom. I know, you knew it was coming. There were some heated exchanges. So Ashlee, how did those conversations shape you in your activism and your engagement?
To this day, I am shaking around the problematic commentary I had on bi people because I'm from a school where we used to call it the bi now, gay later plan. So like whenever people were like, oh, like I'm bi, it's just like, oh no, honey, you're confused. Just give it a couple of club visits and a couple of this and that. But little did I know that like I just wasn't on the right side of it because I really didn't have people that I knew personally who identified as bi. And so basically what I had to realize in that moment personally was that in many spaces I have been the mentor or the teacher, but I'm also always going to be a student. And so I had to then go after that movie and educate myself more. I had to, which is this idea that if I'm someone who there is a thing called lateral oppression, and lateral oppression explains when people from an oppressed demographic enact violence or erasure against other marginalized people. And just because I'm a Black trans woman doesn't mean I can't be complicit in that. And so it was an opportunity to just kind of even have a little bit more compassion with people who get it wrong with trans people, because like if you see the ways in which you can get it wrong with someone else, it made me a lot more patient with how I engaged in discourse with others.
Alexis, this was early on in your journey. How did it shape your voice, your journey of activism? How important was this whole project for you?
Well, I think it was twofold. This journey for me really was like unpacking my own privilege first and foremost. And I think that that's part of being a good ally and part of being like an activist, right? It all starts right here and like looking at like who I am and what privilege I do have. So that journey really helped me look at some of my biases and helped me look at my privilege and helped me unpack that stuff, which really is the first step to showing up for other people. And then, like I started to learn also what the struggles of different communities are. And like privilege protects and insulates us from a lot of things. So I didn't understand like intersectional struggles. And I didn't understand the way that like implicit bias will keep you from getting a job, which will keep you from getting housing, which will keep you like basically putting yourself in harm's way and lead you to places, like which can literally take your life. I knew that those things happened, but I didn't understand the scale and the way that all these systems were intertwined. So, this journey, like whether it was having conversations with like Ashlee or Rachel or Kira or whoever else who had a different experience from my own, from having those conversations and visiting the sites that we went to and learning about what happened at those sites, that really started the ball rolling on my own activism.
Yeah, I mean, there feel like there's so many takeaways from it, and watching it again, even more to take away. Jules, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to say something that, after the film was finished and I had this rough cut, I think, I've talked to you about this before, Jackie, on another panel. When I screened it for lesbian women and gay men, and one gay couple in particular was like, yeah, just get rid of the bi stuff. And then, these lesbian women, like there was like, I showed it to a gaggle of these, of lesbian women that were part of a political group I'm affiliated with. And like, I showed it to them one night and they were like, yeah, that bi stuff, I hate that bi stuff, because they're all lesbians straight up. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Because it was like, I mean, people say the bi erasure, and it's like, it really does exist. So for me, it was like wasabi to the brain, I'm like, this has to go in the movie, stay in the movie, and we need to talk about it. So.
Yeah, well, as a bi-B, I will tell you that it definitely still goes on, but it's also amazing to see people standing for community, growing, speaking up. Ashlee, I see how you move through the world and how we all, to do. So it's really awesome to see that growth anytime we can see it in anyone. It's really, really super dope. Vic, as a journalist, what have you found to be the biggest takeaway after watching Disarm Hate? What was the biggest piece for you?
Well, I was just really excited that, Jules did this and Jason organized the rally, because it's really a bigger issue, gun violence and preventing gun violence, and our obsession with guns is a big national and a cultural issue. And here is this sort of group of queer activists that are joining this. On one hand, we are addressing gun violence that affects our own community. For example, the Pulse tragedy that happened. But on the other hand, we are joining in unison to address a much bigger issue nationally that's been sort of for decades lingering, and not much gets done because of bureaucracy and politics and, the lobbyists and NRA and such. So anything that pushes that forward and lights, shines a light on that is really important. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, of course, the film also showed that the LGBTQIA+ has even more. It can continue, and we're not all the same. We don't all think alike, and we shouldn't. And that there are layers and there are variations, and we also have our own differences and our own personal struggles. And I think Jules did a good job of sort of showing a little bit of the other side, and showing a few characters, or persons, I should say, because it was not a fictitious film, who were for guns and what that looks like. Mm-hmm. So it was a very sort of diverse and comprehensive film. And it definitely contributes to our social cohesion and our, at least my take and my activism toward some sort of a meaningful gun control that's responsible.
Jason, you were on the receiving end of a lot of, I'd say, fan mail, but not all fan mail. You got a lot. You dealt with a lot of hate mail. You dealt with a lot of aggression. What was that like for you in that moment, in these crazy long days, hard nights? What is that like? The one question people keep submitting is, how did Jason not quit? I've seen this question so many times. People submitted. So how did you not quit, and how did that shape it for you?
The first email that I got when I had finally set up the website, I think it's even in the film, I was a little naive when I got it. I was so excited when you get that ping on the phone, and it was the Disarm Hate email. And I opened it up, and it was from a guy, and he basically said that he was sad that AIDS hadn't killed me as a faggot, but he hoped that a stray bullet would. And I thought, If that's the kind of mail I'm getting from a complete stranger, then I'm doing something right. I'm saying something that's making someone so uncomfortable because they know I'm telling the truth. So I have to keep pushing, because I wasn't one of those 49 people at Pulse. I still have the opportunity to do something. They don't. So how do I not take that chance? How do I not keep pushing forward? It was horrible. People within my own community no longer speak to me. People that I've known for years don't speak to me because they are pro-gun, and they wouldn't even allow the conversation to happen. And so it was kind of shocking for me, but at the same time, I don't give a shit. I feel perfectly fine and extremely proud, and I feel very strong and confident in the choices that I made, and I stand behind all of them.
And look what it's created. Look what it's done.
Yes.
Ashlee?
I just want to say that was, I think, one of the bonding moments for us was I was like, who is this little white queen that's happening? Because one of the things that kills me about the LGBTQIA plus community at large, and we're amongst family, so we can talk about it, is we keep subscribing to these respectability politics that are authored by entities and institutions that don't respect us. You are the descendant of brick throwers. Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, ACT UP. They didn't just call it ACT UP just to be trendy, like they actually acted up. And so the thing is, we keep thinking that we're going to be able, I mean, we create change from all ends of the space, right? We do it in politics, and some of the work that Alexis is doing up in Sacramento. We do it through the grassroots advocacy, you know, through the Jasons, people who may not necessarily be a career activist or a career organizer, but they still feel a sense of social responsibility to their respective community. And so I just think that one of the things I loved about watching Jason's journey and watching the ways that it intersected is that we stopped being polite. We stopped reading these like prompters and, oh, you know, like we're, you know, this, you know, it wasn't just about gay marriage. Like, newsflash, some of us, you know, this isn't Pretty Woman. We're not Julia Roberts. Richard Gere is not coming to save us. Whether we get married or not, our lives are still in danger. And so it really, it made me feel good and feel seen to see other people who weren't trans women of color or trans folks of color actually care about other issues that didn't directly impact them. Because what I've come to realize over the years is that the only way we will ever know true freedom is when we learn how to build cross-cultural coalitions that yield dignity, safety, and access for all of us. And that's what I think Jason was doing. It was very, in fact, there was a portion where Jason and I had talked, and I interviewed Jason and asked him, you know, can you talk about these things? And the ways in which he talked about it, he didn't hold back. And I think that if we truly mean business when we say we want to save lives, we're going to stop holding back and doing the real work that's going to heal the movement.
And holding our you know, community to account for what we say we're going to do. And you all navigated a lot of those conversations. You know, Ashlee, you had some deep combos and unpacked a lot, you know, how hard it is to talk about privilege, even in our community, how difficult it was. I mean, Dusty just kept trying to get, I get it, but you don't. I get it, but you don't. You know, you really had to navigate it. And it looked exhausting. Everybody wants to conflate their struggles, right? And that's something that we deal with. You've done so much work in that area. Does it ever get easier to have these conversations?
I think for me, it has somewhat, in the sense that I personally learned how to be the accomplice that I want someone to be to my respective community. So I feel there was a minute where I did not want to hear about bi folks. I did not want to hear about poor Akira being in the South and being poor and white. I did not care. Black trans women are dying. You know what I mean? But what I didn't realize at that moment is that this like this juggernaut system of supremacy, it can only thrive if it implements a strategic plan of divide and conquer. So literally the only way that any of us will ever get the outcomes that we're fighting for is if we stick together. It's like this game of whack-a-mole. You know, they hit one of us over the head, then the others come up. They hit them over the head, then the others come up. But what would happen if all the moles rose at once? And so that's personally how my activism has shifted, because even in the film, I just noticed that like I would hear what they were saying, but I really wouldn't hear what they were saying, just because it was just like, all I know is I'm hurting, I'm in danger, I'm suffering. But what I now understand is that each and every one of us hold a key that unlocks the door for another group of us to come through and us to fight together.
Absolutely.
Ashlee, I think, Ashlee, you and I talked about that, because I think what a lot of people in our community don't realize is that those outside of our community have made it a life's mission, politically, financially, socially, economically, to pit us against each other. Because if we spend our time fighting each other, we can't unite to fight them, which is where real change, real progress, and real human and civil rights come from.
The other piece that we talked about too was that privilege is not a dirty word. Like when we talk about privilege,
I have it.
Automatically think that you're delegitimizing or invalidating their experiences. And that's not what we're saying. When we're talking about privilege, we're talking about that like superpower. Like this is like a Marvel production. Like you have this superpower, this thing that you can leverage to be a critical part of the work that we're doing. And so when we're asking people to acknowledge their privilege, we're not telling them to step back or trying to tell them to deny their struggle. We're asking them to step into this place of proactivity, to understand that you're not completely powerless, that we're not victims, that we are warriors, we do triumph, and we have the capacity to completely shift the social ecology if we link up and amplify the gifts and talents and voices and abilities of others. That was why one of the best parts I also enjoyed was Alexis's journey. Her journey was in finding her voice. Like, where do I fit in? And part of what I learned walking away from that is we need to have a healthy succession planning. We need to be able to respect the work that those who've come before us have done as the blueprint that we work from. And we need to be prepared to let go of the reins and relinquish some of that power so that the next generation can come in and continue carrying the torch. And so it was so beautifully done that Jules casted all of these people from all walks of life, different ages, different experiences, because that's what a true blueprint for coalition looks like. It has to be diverse. It has to be inclusive. What Vic said, it doesn't mean we necessarily always have to agree on every single thing, but the fact that we all want to be able to live healthy, safe lives and thrive, that's what brought us together, and it's what's kept us together.
Jules, I wanted to hear from you on that.
I'm sorry, and speaking of origin stories in the Marvel universe, I feel like this is Alexis's origin story.
This is.
I have to say that's like, I don't know. I mean, that makes me so happy. I think that's one of the biggest pieces of happiness that I have about this film is that, Alexis has said to me, I'm going to let Alexis tell you.
Sure. I mean, I think it really was, right? I came back from this whole experience, and the thing that I always say, and the things that I would share at like West Hollywood, like women's leadership conferences and stuff like that, is like, you don't need to have this sort of experience. Like, I just came back and said, I want to do more for my community. What would that look like? And that's it. That was the open-ended question. So I started volunteering different places, and I started showing up to different advisory boards and showing up to different events in the city, and just going to see how I could help and like learn more about people and see what were the issues that were affecting the community, and take what I had learned on this journey and turn that into real change, which, eventually turned into an appointment on a city advisory board, which turned into me really feeling like, oh, I want to try to work for environmental change in public policy, which turned into, now I'm in Sacramento, like trying to work for change on the state and sometimes the federal level. So, but it all started with me going on this experience, seeing an issue and saying like, oh, I want to do more to help my community. What would that look like? And, like that, for me, it took an RV, but for anyone else, it could take, just watching this panel or any incident that you see on the news, let that be a call to action to really get involved in your community and volunteer and just show up, see the ways that you can use your privilege, right? And use the resources at your disposal to help other people.
Now, Alexis, speaking of your journey, there was a love connection that may be dramatic. We'll call it a romance during the filming, which you knew I was going to do, being respectful of your current relationship. We won't ask for the deets. We're not going to keep it classy, West Hollywood. How did that shape where you were on your journey at that time?
Right. I think this was so early on in my process of transition. I think I had been out to myself for about 1.5 years and then just been living authentically for a little over a year, and like had tried to dip my toe into the waters of dating. And, you know, it just, I shared a lot about it in the film. Like I, especially where I was, just really struggled to find value as a partner, as a transgender woman, right? And I think it was my old thinking and this old binary thinking of saying like, you know, like people won't want someone who is not a binary choice. Some people wouldn't want a transgender partner. And this experience like helped challenge a lot of that and like really helped me see like, oh, I do have value as a partner. Like, oh, like I can have like I could have a relationship. I could have like access to things like that. I think this is something that I think about a lot. Myself as a trans woman, I thought that I wasn't worthy of a lot of really good things for a good portion of my life prior to transition. Those are the things that kept me in the closet, right? And like then when I first came out, I was like, oh, I don't feel like I'm worthy of the great job or the great partner or anything like that. And throughout the course of my transition, like I've seen like all those things have started to fall away. And I've started to say like, oh, like I have value as like a wonderful human being, regardless of like all other identities. And I specifically have value as a transgender partner. So it was all sorts of learning. And just like.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. And I know you blushed just a little bit, so I'll take that W. Julianna, you know, Ashlee and Jason both talked a lot about the journey and kind of all of the places it took everybody. How much of it did you plan? I know there's some stuff you could not have planned here, but how much of it did you go, I want to touch on these things, and how much of it was just the magic of being there?
Well, don't tell you I gave them like, you know, a huge dossier like this big when we all got on the RV. Like it was like, you know, I had spent, I don't know, it was like hundreds of dollars on each one of these booklets. It had, you know, everything about gun violence you could possibly think of. And every time an LGBTQIA member had been gunned down. And I was like, just flip through it. And then, you know, when we would do different stops where people in our community were killed, I would have them flip to a page and research. But it was like I tried to fit, you know, 12 gallons into a Dixie cup for myself before I got on this RV. And then I was hoping that I could get them to do the same, but we really weren't prepared. No one could possibly be for what happens. And now I come from a film, you know, background where, you know, my aspirations going to film school and getting out of film school and being put at CBS and then MTV, I thought, you know, great, I want to be like the greats, like, you know, Steven Spielberg, blah, 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 blue. And here I am on this RV to hell. And we are doing the best we can with the limited equipment that we have for our budget, and it just wasn't in the cards for me. And I just, you know, this was just not how it was supposed to happen. You know, this is just not my life. And I met myself, you know, on that road. Mm-hmm. I met myself, and you know, I want to tell you, there are so many things that you just could not plan for. And I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but I want to tell you, there was a point when we got to DC after we were on the road, it was 9 days total, but I dropped them off at, you know, what is that, Jason? I dropped them off at the
Comic Park?
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah, the Comic Park.
Yeah, Potomac Park. I dropped them off, and you know, I drove the RV somewhere to park, and it was like there was a heat advisory. It was like 109 degrees, and the crew kept texting me, "We forgot this." And I would go back. Then they would be like, "We forgot this." I would go back, and I had to walk 2 miles to Potomac Park, and then I had to go back 2 miles. And then anyway, at one point, I just started laughing. you know, and I was under an overpass and my knees gave out from the heat, from the exhaustion, everything. And I was just laughing. And I was like, God, I don't know, you can't kill me today. You just can't. And I was like, if you do, just let me get that footage to somebody so they can just have this be something. And it was just, I don't know. I was like, I met the woman on the road. I really met the woman that I wanted to be, somebody who follows through, somebody who makes a commitment and just does it. And for 4 years, this movie was what?
I was like, someone who trusts her own voice in a male-dominated industry. Name that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. And I've talked to Ashlee a lot about that. And I want to tell you, in the end, it took 4 years in post to do it. And I just kept remembering that day under the overpass where I was laughing and crying and too weak to get up. And I was just going to make it my life's mission to make sure that this movie was finished. And like I said, I met the filmmaker who I am and who I'm proud to be today.
You see certain projects and it's transformative, the work is transformative, but you can also feel this journey. And this really felt like that thing. Like you saw so much of Ashlee, and Ashlee, you frame the way that I message out certain things. You know, I follow your social and there's things I'm like, oh, take the note. Because also, spoiler alert, white people, you can just take the note and move on. You don't have to re-examine your childhood every time someone corrects something. But also Alexis, you know, this journey for you, Jason, watching you kind of lean into this grassroots activism and just take it by storm, however, hook, crook, however you had to. This really is one of those projects where it felt that way. I don't know who struggled more, Spielberg with the shark or you with that damn RV, but it all came to me. It all came to me. I just want to point out, I know we've got a few minutes left. We are taking questions. If anybody has a question, you can pop it in the Q&A. We have one compliment, of course, from Councilmember John Erickson, just saying how proud he is of Alexis, as we all are. So if you have questions and you're watching, please pop them in and we'll ask them. But until then, I'll keep going and ask a few more if everyone here is cool with it.
Sure.
Awesome sauce. Thank you. So at the Backstreet Cafe in Roanoke, Donato was talking with Deanna. There was a conversation about the importance of bars being safe spaces for the community. We're in this crazy time now after the pandemic. We were losing queer spaces, right? But now we've lost so many queer spaces, and we're struggling with that as a community. This is for all of you, so whoever wants to jump in, how important were queer spaces? Are they to you? And how can we protect them? Jason, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I came out in Boston. So for me, you know, I ended up working in a drag bar. So my entire kind of early gay formative years were around trans women and drag performers and stage people. So it was a safe space. But, you know, even back then, my drag mother, who was a woman of color, you know, they would go to another bar after our bar closed, and you know, we would all take a cab and I would drop them off. And every time she'd get out of the cab and they'd go into the bar, she would tell the doorman, the security guy at the door, you never allow her in. You know, it was one of those bars that she had gone through, but she was going to make sure that I didn't go down that road.
Right.
She had already driven that road and parked her car, but I was not going down that road. And I think that's what you get from those safe spaces or gay bars, is you get family and you get community, which brings you safety. And that's what we're losing.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I have something.
Oh, go ahead, Vic.
Oh, I have something to share on that. So, of course, losing queer spaces it's sad, because despite everything that we have in 2021, and even if we go back to the end of the Obama administration, before Trump took back so much of our rights that we had gained, we still need those spaces for people to come and congregate and feel comfortable, because the fact is that not just throughout the US or Midwest or the South, but right here in Southern California, there are many cities and neighborhoods where people they may not feel unsafe, but they may they don't feel comfortable being around the neighborhoods that they are in, the spaces to be completely themselves.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of bars, the West Hollywood or the greater LA losing so many gay bars, most of that is attributed to one, I'm trying to be diplomatic, to one factor or person.
We know
and
it is.
I'm not going to get into which side I stand on. It's irrelevant. But so that's what happened. So we can't necessarily say that the community wasn't supporting these bars, wasn't frequenting them, and that therefore that's what happened. Now, the other side is that I have to be truthful. I came out of the closet at 27 and I shot out of the closet. And when I came out, it was on. And for 6 years, I basically was going out like 6 nights a week, going to bars. And until 27, even through college, being in a fraternity, being in a theater school, I didn't really drink a lot. And but when I came out, the bars and the clubs were really the only place for me to go and be around my people. So there are some pitfalls, and I'm not saying, so I believe that although alcoholism is sort of something you're born with, and you have the genes and you have the tendency of the ism, a lot of that was helped, and my alcoholism sort of came through when I spent, it's like there's a saying in the 12 step that I'm a member of, that if you go to the barbershop and you stay there long enough, you're going to get a haircut. So in a way, I just want to say that we need more queer spaces that are not just bars.
Yeah.
Not to say that there's anything wrong with bars, not to say that I don't go to bars now or anything like that. I'm just saying that, and I understand the history of it through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Bars were the only place that people could go. It was like, and a couple of our LGBT rights movements started from Black Tavern in Silver Lake in 67, and of course Stonewall in 69. So the bars in LA, the situation right now is a little bit unique because of the way that they were lost. But I recently interviewed Mayor Horvath, and she brought this up, and she talked about how some are coming back. We have a gym bar coming back, and the space for Rage possibly being turned into a big new club by Lance Bass. So, I just have to say, with everything that we could still be doing and everything that awaits us and all the change that we can still make, even with thankfully having President Biden in office, we've done a pretty damn good job. And as a queer community in this country, we've come a long way. We've really fought really hard. So we should pat ourselves on the back for like just a minute at least.
Agreed. Thank you. I want to get to one audience question if I can. We have someone tuning in from Connecticut. That is Barbara, who I know is tuning in. And the question from Barbara is, the rally brought so many different groups together, united around this one cause. Has there been any continued collaboration of groups like Pink Pistols, Gays Against Guns, Black Lives Matter, etc.? Have you seen any of that grouping? Jules?
Yes, I would like to say thank you, Barbara. Pink Pistols is still going strong, and they're actually doing a 5-year remembrance in New York City. I believe at the Pier, they're staging one of their, I think it's called a die-in, where it's this thing that they have basically trademarked and developed, where they go and they die all at once and like lay on the ground, as if they've been shot in a mass shooting. And they do something for the Pulse Remembrance every year, and they have a membership that has skyrocketed since Pulse. But yeah, so to answer your question, Gays Against Guns, I'm trying to think if there are others. Jason mentioned Poe Murray at the Newtown Action Alliance, and I believe they work with the LGBTQIA community. They are one of the groups that really honor the steps that Jason has like paved. And other than that, Jason, I think that's a good question for you too, if you want to piggyback.
I know that some of the groups have kind of crossed lines and are kind of supporting each other in kind of behind the scenes to make sure that their events are successful, because they're realizing that the message is stronger, and that what makes them different is so much further down the line that they can all stand shoulder to shoulder. So I think there have been quite a few groups that have kind of stepped up and are working together. Like I will be attending and helping to organize the Newtown Holiday Vigil coming up at the state capitol. So they are reaching out, they are crossing lines, and I'm glad to see that it didn't kind of end on that one day.
And Jackie, Kira Glenn, who is in the movie, has asked a question. I'm wondering, can you see that?
Yep, I was just going to jump to that. So Kira Glenn was asking, when is the next rally?
Who's organizing it? Oh, Lord. Yeah. It's been something that I have actively thought about. I just had to get through the last 4 years. I think most all of us did.
Yeah.
I think, if you've seen the documentary, you kind of see my last thoughts after everything kind of happened, after everything I went through. But I feel like I don't think that my work or the work was finished that day, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I definitely do feel that I don't even want to call it a part 2, because I almost feel like part 1 wasn't completed.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely feel that Disarm Hate needs to kind of it needs to come off the shelf and almost figure out who it is now in 2021, because Disarm Hate is a very different statement now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to take some time. But I actually have an email sitting in my draft box going to Ashlee. So there were some questions that I had for her about something coming up. So yeah. Yep.
Please tell me it's for a reality show based on this film, because I am ready. That was actually one of the closing questions as we wrap up, is just where do we go from here in this fight? So thank you, Jason. Alexis, where do we go from here?
I think there's ways that we really can continue to build a broad coalition. I was on another panel talking about this film, and I just was talking about Duana Johnson's case and the need for police accountability. And I think if we're not talking about disarming hate and defunding police departments, it really is a lost cause. So I think finding the ways that all these struggles intersect is crucial and key, and really is the next step.
Amazing. Ashlee?
That was why I had my finger up earlier when we moved on, because the question was safe space, and 2020 was the deadliest year on record for the transgender community. And on top of that, it was mostly gun violence. And on top of that, 2 of the trans folks were even shot at by the police. And so at a time where New York City, behind the scenes, I've been working with their pride, and we've now removed police presence from a place that's supposed to be a safe space, which is a complete disrespect of the legacy of the people who fought to get us that space. And so to Alexis's point, you asked the question, you were like, BLM is not really connected to this still. And I am directly connected with BLM. I'm friends with the founders, because when we say defund the police, to Alexis's ever so eloquently point, we're not saying, oh, we don't need any kind of, some people are. What we're saying is that money could be much better spent creating more safe spaces and much like what Vic was saying, like maybe instead of bars, we want this, or we need this, or there's just money that we're throwing away in ways that are directly contributing to our further marginalization. So that's it. We need more understanding of intersectionality, and we need to address the racism in our community. We just do.
Absolutely. And follow Alexis, follow Ashlee, get involved with the West Hollywood Social Justice Task Force, get involved in your local community, dive into Alexis's earlier point, Ashlee's point, to everyone, to what Jason did and how we all got here. Just dive in, find a place to get yourself in and get in the work, and the rest of it will come to you. Jules, closing thoughts, and where do you go from here?
Yeah, I really just wanted to say this because while the pandemic had us in a shutdown, and I was saying something's this very unpopular thing I kept saying is, well, we don't have any, mass shootings right now, and that's really the big pandemic, or that's, it's an epidemic in this country. I go, wait until they start opening up, we're going to have these mass shootings again. And sure enough, we've got one every day on the books since we opened up our country. And to me, it's like, while we were, silently waiting during the pandemic and sitting here, I knew that this thing was just building and building, and we've got to address this issue. Nobody wants to talk about it, I mean, it's one of those things that it gives Jason hate mail and death threats. It gives me death threats and hate mail through the Disarm Hate page. It's just such a divider. I mean, you could be with liberals that really still don't want you to take away their guns, and we've got to. So the thing I want to leave everyone with is moving ahead in activism. How can we motivate people to look at this issue with a clarity that has been addressed in other issues in this country?
Agreed. Any other closing thoughts? Has everyone been heard? Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share on that? There are some really powerful points. Vic, yeah.
Everyone made great points in closing thoughts, and I agree with echo all of that. In terms of intersectionality and not living in a bubble, I would like to see those of us who live in the United States, and despite our challenges and despite all the fight that we still have to have in front of us, like so many states where you can get fired because you're LGBTQ, we're still very, very much privileged compared to the rest of the world. What I would like to see is that we get a little bit more engaged with queer people throughout the world. There are countless countries that are still in where we were in the 50s and 60s in terms of how the queer have to live. And there are some that are in the Middle Ages. So when you compare that, when we look at the big spectrum, we've come a long way. And I think that responsibility is to really getting more engaged in a meaningful way with these nations and the queer people there, and help them, because real horrendous atrocities are being committed against them, not just one or two people as happens in the US, but in a much larger scale.
And Vic, are there any takeaway items? Can people follow you to get more information? What's a good way to support and follow you, and how can they get involved?
Well, you can read my publication, thebluntpost.com, and my radio show, The Blunt Post, with Vic, is on KPFK 90.7 FM on Monday mornings at 6. And I am working on a documentary. I just came back from a trip in Armenia, my motherland, documenting the atrocities committed by Azerbaijan and Turkey against Artsakh Armenians, another very oppressed community, and how the geopolitics and thirst for oil and other factors are basically making Europe and the US basically turn a blind eye and play three monkeys. So I'm documenting that. So that's to come.
Yeah, I've been watching a little bit of your journey on social media. It's really incredible. So looking forward to more on that. And thank you. Alexis, how can people find you and support you?
I would say support the Sacramento LGBT Community Center, saccenter.org, or Sac Center on social media. That's where you'll see me doing most of my work. You can follow me on Instagram at Alexis in the letter N transit, but it's a lot of memes. So if you follow the Sac Center, you see like the real work. But if you like memes, follow me.
Alexis gives great meme. I can tell you that right now. Jason, how can people find you and support you?
Disarm Hate on Twitter is where I kind of do and pretty much most of the sharing, and you can kind of find me mixed with whatever you have with the Disarm Hate documentary page as well, and anything that we're actively working on will be announced there first.
Amazing. And we have one suggestion I want to share with Jules before we let you go, and that is Marina was saying that they love the diversity on this panel. Thank you for the time. Maybe the next film could be called Embracing Love, whether as a single LGBTQ plus person or part of a couple or group. So there's a thought starter maybe for a future project for you, Jules. Oh, you're on mute, Jules.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
How can people find you and support you?
Doc to the number Disarm Hate on Instagram. And I want to just say tomorrow, Jason, Alexis, and I go live with Florida International University, who is just blocks away from Pulse nightclub. They are doing a special panel with us. And then Friday, for the 5-year remembrance of Pulse Vigil, Ashlee is their keynote speaker. You can find that information on Florida International University Instagram, the Pride Center Instagram, but always find me on Doc to Disarm Hate at Instagram.
And remember, you can see the film on Amazon. If you haven't, immediately, there's your night and you're welcome. So enjoy it. And Ashlee-Marie Preston, how can people support you? How can people find you?
You can support me through my organization that I launched during the pandemic called You Are Essential. It's youareessential.org. We fund grassroots organizations who were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. We provide educational resources and tools to help them sustain their work. And we also help activists and organizers become active beneficiaries of the labor that they produce for everyone else. And on Instagram, I'm Ashlee-Marie Preston 2Es. And on social media all the way across the board, Twitter, Facebook.
And always worth it. So again, follow, support these fine folks, the work they've all done, the work they continue to do. This has been amazing. So thank you all so much for sharing the time. It was so great to see you all and spend some time together.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody, and happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.